So here's the deal. I have been putting so much pressure on myself recently to give you an updated version on what it's like to live in Boulder, and that pressure has just disabled me from actually being able to make any content at all, really. And the reason I'm starting this video out this way is because I have literally been sitting here trying to film this for like an hour, and I just hate everything I'm saying. I feel like I'm not saying things perfectly the way that I would like you to hear them. And you know what? I'm just gonna scrap that. We're starting over, and I'm just gonna talk to you as if we're just at a coffee shop. You're just a random person that I either know or don't know, but maybe we're gonna be friends. And you have asked me, because I am a native Boulder person, to give you my update on what it's like to live in Boulder. So here we go. Freaking YouTube putting so much damn pressure on me. Although it's not really YouTube's fault, it's my own noggin's fault. So let's just start right from the beginning. If you really don't know me, my name is Genevieve, and on this YouTube channel you will find I have made a number of videos about living in Boulder, moving to Boulder, all the Boulder stuff. I've also made videos just about Colorado in general, even Denver, because I grew up in Colorado. I was born in Boulder, raised in Boulder. I lived in DC for a good part of my adulthood and then moved back to Boulder. So I have now been given a healthy perspective on what Boulder is like versus what other places are like. And now it is time, after all that Boulder has been through with a shooting last March and then the pandemic happening and then wrapping up, there are some things that have changed, that have caused me to see Boulder differently, and that like are actually needing to be talked about. So here we go, me and you, given the information, you're getting the information. I hope this is helpful for you. This is especially for people who want to move to Boulder, because here's part of the catalyst for this video for me, is I have felt so much guilt that my last video, called The Truth About Living in Boulder, I think is what it's called, that I might have dissuaded so many people who wanted to move to Boulder, because that video definitely leaned towards the negative tone of the things that we don't often talk about in Boulder. And I was like, literally, I have been like haunted that so many people might have chosen not to move to Boulder, when really Boulder might have been the place for them. It might have been a really good place for them to end up. And maybe because they saw my video, they changed their mind, and I just feel pain about it. Not only that, but I also had another realization that I need to tell you about. And this realization goes with some of the changes that I have seen subtly taking place in the Boulder culture. And that is, for the first time this past year, people are actually starting to acknowledge more openly the problems with Boulder. Before the pandemic, I feel like people in Boulder really did live in this sort of like idealistic bubble, and we kind of just sort of never really acknowledged the problems. We thought Boulder was the best ever, and it was just sort of like this happy utopia. And because people never acknowledged the shadow part of Boulder, it just like never changed. And that's what I was so badly wanting to point out in that video. And now I'm seeing that more and more people are starting to talk about it. And with more people talking about this shadow side of Boulder in the ways that we can be so neurotic, the ways that we are like so white and living in this very wealthy, very like trying to be inclusive, but we're not actually inclusive at all kind of culture, people are starting to talk about it, and I'm learning new things. God, I hope this makes sense. I am like, I so want you to understand what I have come to understand. A lot of this more open dialogue that I'm talking about is taking place on, of all places, the internet, on Facebook. There is a Facebook group called Boulder Collective, and if you're interested in moving to Boulder or you live in Boulder, I was gonna say highly suggest checking it out, but in a way, any Facebook group is gonna trigger you in some way. Like, again, that's a very Boulder thing to say, but it's good because there's information there, but at the same time, it can bring out the worst in people in some ways. But anyway, I'm on the Boulder Collective group, and someone else on that group was talking about this like shadowy aspect of Boulder. And the thing that he said that really struck me so differently and helped me to see the people of Boulder differently is that he said the reason that it's the culture here is so kind of like, people are guarded, people seem to be a little bit more like just like frozen in how they are, and they're just much more like in themselves, is because people who are drawn to live in Boulder are usually emotionally complex and very intellectual people. And when you have a society of emotionally complex people, you're obviously going to have emotionally complex problems within that society. And here's me, Genevieve, thinking I'm like the smartest person in Boulder. Also, every person in Boulder thinks they're the smartest person in Boulder. And I loved that I just had my own ego blown up because this guy made an observation that I honestly had never realized. I kind of was living in my own shadow, thinking that people in Boulder are just like kind of assholes and living in their ivory tower, thinking they know what's best for everyone when really they don't, because they're just, you know, they're just douchey. But really, it's like he was saying the truth. It's that we're all very emotionally complex people. We live in Boulder because we want a better world. We're in an ivory tower trying to work it all out because we want things to be good in the world, but we're also, sometimes we're sensitive, sometimes we're damaged. We come from weird backgrounds. And so it just, because we're just so emotionally complex and also intelligent, it's also a very intelligent community here, there are more complex societal problems. And I really needed to hear that because it helped me to have more compassion for the rest of my Boulder community and also for myself. Also, the guy who said this, if you happen to be watching this and you want credit for it, you can let me know in the comments. I didn't want to say his name because I didn't have time. I could have reached out and asked him if he wanted to be referenced, but I didn't have time, or I just was procrastinating, because that's me. So if he would like to be credited for this realization, just let me know and I'll put your name in the description. But anyway, moving on. That was a long explanation of part of the catalyst for me making this updated video. So I've had a few interactions and just big realizations in myself that have really helped me to see my home city, my Boulder, in a more compassionate light, instead of through this harsh lens of just like what's right with it and what's wrong with it, but to see that it is like this really interesting, complex, and even like diverse in its complexity, though not diverse in its, you know, race things, but diverse in its complexity, that have made me have more compassion and to see the problems of Boulder a little bit differently. That paired with this natural opening up I've been seeing in people in Boulder, and honestly, I started to notice that people in Boulder were maybe being more open about talking about the problems of Boulder or about what their fears are or their cares, like in a more authentic way. I really felt that was happening after the really tragic shooting that happened at the Table Mesa King Soopers back in March. And this is also that part of the reason this video is hard for me to make is because I don't have the perfect thing to say about that shooting that happened. I am still myself like in a lot of like processing around it, and I've honestly like, so I guess I will tell you, if you're curious like how we're doing after that, I honestly feel like as a society in Boulder, we've kind of just snapped back into like status quo in many ways. And I think that's a survival instinct, just to kind of go right back into denial. Obviously that store has not opened. There are plans supposedly to completely remodel the King Sooper so that it looks totally different than how it did before, and then reopen it this fall, which I think is kind of like, whoa, that's a little fast. I wonder if they're actually going to be able to stick to that timeline. But in terms of like how it's changed Boulder, one, it kind of feels like it hasn't, because everyone just went back into like status quo mode. But, and that's understandable, again, because it was a really big trauma, and the only way we know how to keep going is just to like go back into whatever we were doing before. But I have noticed that people are much more open, like more vulnerable as a community, like not just as individuals, but as a community, because that event like punched us as a community. It wasn't an individual person on person thing. It was like a community threat. And see, this is where I get into like tripping myself up because I don't know the perfect way to explain it all, because it's something that just feels so important that I want to say the right things, and I just don't know how. So I'm just gonna keep focusing on this more, I would say, like a positive thing that has come from it, in that, yeah, I'm seeing people talk about our community in a more honest way. But yeah, it has also been a little frustrating. It almost feels like gaslighting, that we went through this like insanely crazy, tragic thing that just randomly got dropped on us like a bomb, and then we just kind of went back to normal. Obviously, no gun laws have changed or anything like that. And I know it's extremely frustrating for people, but I also know, like I said, like it's just something we have to do to survive, is like just keep going and just try to get back to our day-to-day lives. And yeah. I told you this video would be like a coffee shop ramble, so thank you for hanging in there with me. I'm now going to switch gears and go into the housing situation. So anyone who knows me knows that when it comes to the housing situation in Boulder, that is like my anger point. That is where the pain is triggered, because it infuriates me to see how so you can't even get like a single family home in Boulder, like a freestanding one, for under $1 million, it seems. Like I just did a search before I made this video, and I was looking just for like $600,000 homes in Boulder, and they exist, but they're all like 2-bedroom condos. There is nothing that is out of the affordable housing program that is like under $1 million. If you just want even just like a regular, like crappy ranch house that was built in the 1950s, they're all like creeping up towards $1 million. And it's just, that's insane to me that even just to get like a very basic house in Boulder, it's insane. So the housing issue is obviously the same. It's very expensive, but here's the thing that I love that goes with all this stuff I'm talking about, in terms of people are starting to get a lot more vocal about the problems of Boulder. And when it comes to housing, people are not doing this whole like, oh, well, that's just how it is in Boulder, and you know, it's just expensive here. Like that's how it used to be. Like you'd say, oh, Boulder's expensive, and they'd be like, oh yeah, it's just expensive. Like as if there's nothing wrong with that. We should just accept that blindly. But now, again, Facebook, when we go back to either the Boulder Collective Facebook group or the Boulder Creative Housing group, those are the two, if you want to be triggered in a Facebook group, those are the two groups to join. In the Creative Housing group, if someone posts a place that is obviously just too expensive, people will jump on them for it. Obviously, some people are really rude about it. You don't really need to be rude, but it's the internet and everyone, you know, has to be mean apparently. But people will call out when stuff is too expensive, and people are also generous in when people are on the Boulder Creative Housing group and they're really trying to find something that is affordable. People are generous in trying to get them the right resources or to try to help them find a spot that might fit them. And that's really encouraging to see. So again, if you are someone who's watched my videos and I have dissuaded you from moving to Boulder based on either the housing or the culture or the whiteness or whatever it is, it's all true, but it's something that you decided was like you couldn't handle it, all because I said it. Oh my God, what is with me today? Maybe it's Mercury retrograde that it's just so hard to be coherent in a video. So let's move on. Bottom line, if I have dissuaded you based on any factor that I've talked about in past videos, I want you to know that you might still really be needed here. And there are options for you, but you do probably have to get creative. And the reason I especially want the people who feel like maybe they wouldn't fit in Boulder to move here is because we need your voice to change things. If we keep allowing the excuses of like, oh, it's too white, it's too expensive, it's too crime-ridden with the homeless situation and the meth, and then we had a shooting, and although people aren't really applying the shooting to, that's not normal crime. That was obviously a huge like issue here, but that was so far from normal for Boulder, but it is a thing on people's minds. If you use all that to say, I'm not gonna move there, we're never gonna move forward. We're not really gonna change. Boulder's just gonna stay its weird little bubble where only the rich Google employees with their paddle boards and their kayaks and their very expensive bicycles Only those people can live here, and I don't like that. Genevieve, in her ivory tower, making this YouTube video, wants Boulder to truly be the inclusive place that it's always dreamed of being. The people of Boulder are rooted in like that 1960s and 70s culture of having really progressive values, of free love, of healing, of moving away from conformity, of being able to pick your own path and live your own individual truth. That is like the values that Boulder is founded on, and it very much still exists here. But the thing that bothers me is it exists in this like monetized way now. And I don't think that's truly authentic. But the more we can have people like you live here who are willing to fully commit to living here, because this is also part of the problem. We get so many transplants who have the fantasy of living in Boulder. They get to Boulder, they find they can't make friends because of the Boulder Freeze. I did also, side note, I didn't know that was a phrase in Seattle. They call it the Seattle Freeze, or when you first move to Seattle, you like can't find friends because like everyone's guarded and doesn't like include you and stuff. And the same thing happens in Boulder, and I've talked about it in all my videos, but I didn't know there was like a term for it. So like there's a Boulder Freeze. That does happen. You move here, it's difficult to find friends. It's difficult sometimes to date, even though like I've said in past videos, there's a lot of single people. But for whatever reason, people are kind of unavailable, either emotionally or they're busy or whatever. But that still doesn't stop people from finding partners here and getting married, and it doesn't stop people from eventually finding friends. I continue to make lots of new friends through these videos. I have met more people than I ever would have thought I would have met in Boulder, and I've made new friends. And so the things that I have said in the past that are like, might seem like I'm making it like impossible. I'm making it, but Boulder's making it impossible for you to live here. It's not really true if you commit to staying here and getting through those first few months, because that's what I was saying is that transplants move here, they give it like less than a year, they're disappointed that it doesn't meet their, you know, fantasy of what they thought they were going to get right off the, you know, plane or arriving here. But if you really commit to staying here, if you use your voice to talk about what's important, and that's what we need. Like, things will change if you come here and you apply yourself, if you dedicate yourself to being a full-fledged Boulderite and not just being like kind of a traveling, dabbling Boulderite. We really need that. So I feel like in my past videos, my almost goal was to dissuade you, as I've talked about, dissuade you from moving here. Well, all of a sudden, based on the things I've been through personally, and then also from what I've been seeing in Boulder, just in general, is I would like to encourage you to move to Boulder. I know that's weird that I've suddenly changed my tune, but if you knew what I knew, if you've lived through what I've lived through here in the last few months, it would make sense to you that maybe you do need to move to Boulder. Okay, I have been talking a lot. This video did not turn out the way that I outlined it. I was being so anal, like wanting this to be perfect. Instead, I just sort of spoke more from my heart, which I know, like intuitively, I know that speaking from the heart is always going to be better anyway, but it's a little all over the place. So I hope that you got something out of this video. I should have said this at the beginning, but this video will make more sense if you watch my other videos first, especially the Truth About Boulder video. So if you haven't watched that video, I would suggest you do that now, and then this video will have a little bit more context. But I think this video was kind of okay on its own. Yeah, maybe. Also, I forgot to talk about, so now that Boulder is opening up, I've been going out in public more. I'm not hiding in my little house as much as I usually do, although I still do hide a lot. But anyway, when I'm in public, I have this weird thing where someone looks at me and they're kind of smiling, and my mind goes to, are they smiling at me because they've seen my YouTube video, or are they smiling at me just because they think I look like a nice person? So I say that because if you see me out in public and you're really smiling at me because you've seen this YouTube video or whatever, totally come say hi to me. I actually really enjoy that. I know that like often when I'm in public, I'm like in my own thing. I'm the epitome of what I talk about in terms of being a little bit guarded if I'm just like out on my own, as I might not seem like, I'm not like smiling at the space around me like a freak. But I'm genuinely a pretty friendly person. So if you see me out in public in Boulder and you want to say hi, totally come say hi. That would be so fun. Boulder is luckily a place that has a pretty high vaccination rate. So things have opened up. Well, I kind of think all over the country. Things are opening up very quickly. Masks aren't really even, you know, a thing in a lot of places. I think you still have to wear them on RTD buses. But it's almost like the pandemic never happened. Like we've just gone right back to normal. You're walking up and down Pearl Street. You're doing all the fun outdoorsy stuff that we Coloradans love to do. And yeah, we're all just getting back out into the world more. And so that's another plus about coming to Boulder this time is it's like normal. You can do all the Boulder things. All right, I've been sitting in front of this camera for way too long. So thank you for this coffee shop chat. It was a lot of me talking, not so much you asking me anything. But if you have any other questions, now is your chance to write them in the comments below and I will answer them. I don't often answer questions that are like way too specific because like if you want to know like, I don't know, just things that are only specific to you, I might answer it. I don't know, give it a try. But if it's something about the Boulder experience or your own experience, that's what I'd also love to hear is like if you were in Boulder, because a lot of my peeps who watch this are also Boulder people. Tell me your experience. Tell everyone your experience in the comments below. So anyway, thank you for watching this. Thank you for sharing Boulder with me. I am so glad that I've had kind of like my own change of heart. I really was wanting to move for a while and I honestly don't feel like I want to move that much anymore. Like I only want to move like a little bit now, whereas before I was like desperate to get out of Boulder. Now I see Boulder differently. I see it as, it really is a beautiful place that I'm so lucky to live in. It's hard to find another place on this earth that's as good as Boulder in terms of just the nature here, the beauty here, and even the people. Even though we can be weird, we're definitely weirdos, but we're pretty emotionally diverse, nice-ish. We try really hard and we're smart. So there we go. We got that going for us. All right. Thank you, my friend. I will see you in my next video.